You try to relax, but your brain won't stop. No noise, no problems. But suddenly, everything gets louder. You're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying a conversation from 3 years ago, or obsessing over a mistake you haven't even made yet. It feels like a physical weight behind your eyes. You aren't doing this on purpose, and yet you can't make it stop. This isn't just thinking, it's an ambush. Your brain treats the silence not as a sanctuary, but as a vacuum that must be filled with every unresolved worry. You aren't resting, you are just watching a private horror movie of your own mind's creation. Most people assume their brain is broken because they can't find the off switch. They look at others who seem calm and wonder why their own mind is so restless. But the truth is, your brain isn't failing you. It's actually doing exactly what it was evolved to do. Think of your mind as a high-end, ultra-sensitive security system that simply forgot how to disarm itself. Thousands of years ago, hypervigilance kept us alive. Today, that same system is still scanning the horizon for predators, even though the doors are locked and you are perfectly safe. It's checking for infrared heat in an empty room. It's mistaking the sound of the wind for an intruder. This isn't a defect in your character. It's a setting in your biology. Your brain is a survival machine that is still running a combat program in a peaceful world. It isn't broken, it's just stuck in a loop of protecting you from threats that no longer exist. There is a neurological reason you feel this way now, more than ever. Modern life forces you to process more data in a single afternoon than your ancestors did in an entire year. Every unread email, every unfinished project, every "we need to talk" text stays open like a hidden tab in the background of your mind. In psychology, we call this cognitive load. Your brain functions much like a computer. It has a finite amount of processing power. When you have 50 tabs open at once, the system slows down. By the time evening arrives, even if you haven't moved a muscle, your mental RAM is completely exhausted. You find yourself unable to make simple decisions, like what to eat or what to watch, because your processor is busy running background apps you forgot were open. You aren't failing at life, you're simply out of memory. The system isn't crashing, it's just perpetually stuck at 99%, burning energy on tasks that have no resolution. For many of us, this always-on mode wasn't a choice. It was a childhood necessity. If you grew up in an environment where moods shifted without warning, where you had to walk on eggshells to avoid a conflict, your nervous system learned a brilliant but exhausting survival strategy: anticipation. You became an elite radar system, learning to read the microscopic shifts in a parent's voice or the tension in a room before you could even read a book. You were trained to believe that if you could predict the storm, you could survive it. The problem is that war ended 20 years ago, but you are still wearing the heavy armor. You are still scanning the horizon for a threat that left the building decades ago. Your brain is still trying to protect that child who once had to be perfect to be safe. You aren't just thinking. You are still standing guard over a fortress that is no longer under attack. Have you ever noticed that a day of doing nothing but overthinking feels more draining than an 8-hour shift at work? That's because, to your brain, thinking is working. Every simulation you run, every imaginary argument you win in your head, triggers a real physical stress response. Your heart rate rises, your muscles tense, and your dopamine levels drop as if the event were actually happening. Your body doesn't know the difference between a real threat and a thought. You are burning actual fuel on imaginary problems. This is why you feel paralyzed. You've been working a double shift in a factory that only exists inside your skull. You are physically depleted because your mind has been running a marathon while your body was sitting on the couch. You aren't lazy. You are a spent battery that has been drained by a million tiny, invisible leaks of attention. The exit from this cycle isn't thinking more about how to stop thinking. You cannot put out a fire by adding more wood. The real breakthrough comes from a skill that modern society hates to admit is necessary: selective ignorance. It is the radical act of choosing what to ignore. We are taught that being aware is a virtue, but in an age of infinite information, total awareness is a death sentence for your peace of mind. Selective ignorance is realizing that just because a thought entered your mind, it doesn't mean it deserves an audience. You have to give yourself permission to let the simulations fail, to let the emails stay unread, to let the world be messy without your intervention. It's about understanding that your attention is your most sacred resource, and not every urgent thought is actually important. Sometimes, the only way to win the game of overthinking is to simply refuse to move the pieces. To break the loop, you must change your relationship with your thoughts. Stop saying, "I am anxious," and start saying, "I am noticing a sensation of anxiety." This is what psychologists call cognitive diffusion. It is the art of creating 1 millimeter of distance between yourself and your mind. It's the realization that you are the sky, and your thoughts are just weather patterns. Some days the weather is a violent storm. Some days it's a heavy fog. But the clouds, no matter how dark or loud they are, cannot hurt the sky. They pass, they change, and they dissolve. But the sky remains vast and untouched. You don't need to fix the storm. You just need to stop trying to hold on to the clouds. When you stop engaging with every simulation your brain generates, the energy starts to return. You finally realize that you don't have to be the pilot of every thought. You can just be the passenger watching them go by. But here is the hidden trap no one warns you about. When you finally step back and let the thoughts pass, the sudden silence will feel terrifying. For an overthinker, peace feels like a threat. You have spent so much of your life managing chaos that your nervous system has become addicted to the noise. The moment you stop worrying, a sudden panic sets in. What did I forget? Why am I not stressing right now? This isn't a sign that you need to go back to overthinking. It is simply the withdrawal symptom of a mind detoxing from stress. You have to endure the discomfort of being okay. You have to teach your body that the absence of panic does not mean danger is approaching. Peace is an acquired taste for a survival machine. Let the silence be uncomfortable at first. The quiet truth that modern society hates to admit is that the human mind was never meant to be always on. You were not designed to be a 24/7 data processing center. You are a biological entity with a nervous system that was shaped by silence and slow cycles. You are not broken because your brain feels overheated, and you are not failing because you need to go offline. You are simply carrying the weight of an era that never sleeps with a mind that was never taught how to rest. Now that you see the mechanism, the childhood radar, the cognitive load, the dopamine trap, you have the power to disarm it. The world can wait for your response. The simulations can fail, the clouds can drift away. Give yourself the one thing you've been denying yourself for years: permission to be unproductive. Finally, it is safe enough to let the guard down. Finally, it is safe enough to rest.